Cheers! So, as you might have guessed by the duration of this video, it is a little bit different than the others. Yeah, this video is in fact a conversation that I had with a friend of mine. His name is Nick Stracke, and I met him at the CGTM. That's the additional study program that I previously mentioned in my last video. And, well, he's like me, a techie. He is finishing his master's in data science, and he has been working on blockchain and web3 related projects since 2017. Right now is working on the Pretzel DAO, which is an organization based on the blockchain for people interested in that precise topic. And, well, as you might have guessed, we talked about blockchain and about Web3. Okay, so this might feel like a bit of a random step to start interviewing someone for this channel, but I've already shared about my feelings, I've already shared about, I don't know, my day to day and about certain adventures that I've had, but I haven't shared about this part of me, this curious Manu that likes to talk about different topics with others and learn about the passions that others have and have conversations that spark a certain curiosity in something and that spark then starts turning into a bigger interest. And yes, I really enjoy having these conversations, and I thought I wanted to share this because maybe a conversation such as the one that I had with Nick that I'm going to share in this video can spark in you a certain interest in this topic and give you maybe a bit of an introduction into it or a starting point. So I think I've already introduced too much, and I will just jump into the conversation. Treat it maybe more like a podcast and not like a normal video. So start, I don't know, doing the dishes that are waiting for you, and have this video in the background and maybe learn one or two things about blockchain and Web3. So happy that you're here. Manuletre.
Cool. Nick, you are the very first guest of. I mean, you're the, or rather, you're the very first non-Manu person to appear in the
Exciting.
YouTube channel. Yeah, I mean, thank you for agreeing to like talk with me for. For this video.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I mean the idea is to get a glimpse on why you are so passionate about blockchain and Web3 and stuff. And while talking, maybe give an overview of what the different terms are for those that I mean including me don't know what all of the things mean. And maybe while we speak we can also gather some interesting resources to start like getting into the topic and stuff.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, so I mean that's the idea, and I mean my first question is just what is Web3?
What is Web3? Yeah, so that's a good question. I think the term Web3 really became popular, I think 1 or 2 years ago only. So I think when sort of first like blockchain like as a technology came up, so with like Bitcoin in 2009, like initially people, I think they were just saying like blockchain technology, simply because it was the underlying technology. And then as like, more cryptocurrencies sort of entered the scene, for instance, most people know Ethereum as the second largest cryptocurrency. Then I think people also started to use the term like cryptocurrency. Or often in short, people just say crypto, which, might be confusing because crypto could also just be, sort of the scientific thing of like trying to encrypt something. But yeah, people say crypto for cryptocurrencies. But that was simply just highlighting, and I think a lot of people were thinking about just like, you use it for trading, right? Or people use it to make money. Maybe it's a bit shady. They use it to buy drugs online, and that's why they use the term cryptocurrencies. But then especially in the recent years, also as like tooling became more available and it was easier for developers to build applications, I think this term of Web3 was introduced. Mm-hmm. And really what it means is sort of, it's called Web3 because it would be, or it is the next step of the internet, the next evolution. Where that's coming from is kind of like the first version of the web was really more or less, so the first version of the web was actually very decentralized. Everyone was usually running like their own little server, maybe it was just for a laptop, hosting their own blog or whatever, but it was really just read only. So I would create a website, put it on my home server, and if my server was actually working and running, people could access my website and read my blog and see what I'm doing. And then kind of the next evolution like Web 2, which was also facilitated by new technologies like JavaScript, allowed people or like more websites to be more interactive. So it wasn't only read, it was also write, right? I could, go on Facebook and, tell people how I'm feeling, or I could chat. But that also led to sort of this internet becoming more centralized, because corporations, or like in general people, were thinking, hey, how can I monetize the internet? Because sort of natively, it wasn't straightforward how to sort of monetize, people using your platform. And we saw that was largely captured by, these big corporations, these big organizations, who really centralized the internet. And of course, now we are sort of in a situation where we have like three large, server providers, like everyone knows, AWS, Amazon Web Services. And we all use like a couple of large platforms like YouTube, Instagram, maybe Facebook, WhatsApp for chatting, Telegram. And we're in a very centralized world. And we see that these big players like Google, Facebook, Amazon, they really capture most of the value that is generated by users, effectively by us using the platform. And now the hope and the wish for Web3 is that we can sort of decentralize this a bit again. And how can we do this? And this is where cryptocurrencies come in, basically, because they allow us like very easily to exchange value. We don't need to rely on big organizations anymore. I could simply, create my own token, for my own new website or my own NFT, and simply distribute it to the people. And in general, like the underlying idea is that this helps us to decentralize more. Mm-hmm. And this is really what Web3 is about, and sort of usually what people refer to. So this is not my definition, but we already heard Web1 was read, and Web2 was read and write, and now Web3 would be read, write, and own. That you are actually able to own the content and the value you're creating. Because I'd say, if I have a super great YouTube channel like you do, of course, like it's your channel, right? But who really owns the stuff? It's YouTube, right? If YouTube shuts down, or let's say you start making controversial content for whatever reason, YouTube might just kick you from the platform. So in that sense, YouTube is really owning the stuff. But the whole Web3 is like the ownership actually goes back to the creator.
Okay. You mentioned many ideas. I would like to maybe go through them a bit more slowly. So Web3 is like this new web where everything is not centralized in specific servers, but in like distributed throughout many computers. And that distribution allows ownership of stuff. Is that like, am I correct, or am I missing something? Or
I think it's a bit more nuanced, in the sense that it doesn't mean that all the websites will be hosted on like, your own computer again. But what it does mean is that sort of the important stuff, the value that's stored on the blockchain. And for instance, there is an upcoming protocol, or like actually it already exists. It's called Lens protocol, and the idea is that you build, your social graph, or you store your social graph on the blockchain. So what is a social graph? It could mean many things, but for instance, it means like who follows who, like who's your friend. And why is that useful? Because assume I have many Twitter followers, and it took me 5 years to build this large following. And now I want to switch to a new platform. So right now it's really difficult, because I cannot simply take my Twitter followers and put them into YouTube, right? Of course I can ask him and post, link my YouTube on my Twitter, but still it's not that easy. But if everything sort of was, more or less, let's say, stored on the blockchain, right? Twitter is really just the front end to access the information, but I could simply switch to another front end. So ideas that the blockchain is kind of this public good database that really stores the most important information, and then companies simply provide their front end to access this information.
Okay, that's a very interesting concept. But maybe you already mentioned blockchain twice, and maybe a short introduction, like what is blockchain? How would you define blockchain, very simply?
Yeah, I think the easiest terms is, I assume most people are familiar with a database. So database is simply software that you can use to reliably store your data. And we have that in a centralized fashion. But a blockchain is really just sort of a public database. Everyone can use it, but it's a bit more, because it's also verifiable, in a sense that the data that's there, who hosted it. And you know that it's correct in a sense, and then it's also immutable, it cannot be changed, right? That's actually a core property of a blockchain, that once I posted something on the blockchain, it cannot be changed anymore. It will be there forever. It will be recorded on the blockchain forever.
Okay, that's interesting. Cool. Then we have this this Web3 is then like a web where we store the important stuff of websites, meaning like the example you mentioned, my follower base on YouTube, or I mean the examples there are huge, and I think we can talk about that in a second. But then we can store that in this public good database that's like open to that everyone can write to.
Yeah.
But that cannot change. That is like the blockchain.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I think that's that's an interesting definition. Now, I mean, I don't know if you want to mention something else about that, because I would move a bit to the next question.
Yeah, sure.
That came from also your what you've been mentioning. You talk about tokens.
Tokens, yeah.
And I think that's, I mean, I've heard that many times, like, I'm going to tokenize X or Y. And I think that's a bit abstract, or I don't fully understand, like, what is a token, and what, how does an internet with tokens work?
Yeah, that's a good point, because I think a token in itself is an abstract definition, and a token could mean like many forms or shapes. So for instance, what is a token, right? For instance, 1 Bitcoin is a token. So maybe you can think about it as a unit of account or something. Like when I can create, you know, the way I can have like 10 euros, yeah, I could also have like 10 Ethereum, or like, you know, and in that sense, the Ether would be the token. So a token really is, how to best, I think it's a unit of account. It's like, the way I can have, like, you know, I can have 10 shells, for instance, and then I can use the shells, you know, what people did in the past to trade, right? So the shell is a token. So it's kind of an object that we, you know, define to have value.
Okay, and that token is then written into this blockchain, aka this public database.
Yeah, or more or less, like, it is part of the database. Yeah. So for instance, on Ethereum, which is a blockchain, it allows the creation of new tokens. So you can say, hey, like, I want to create my own token. Maybe you call it Manu tokens, and then the first thing you have to think about is like, how many should there be, right? Usually people want it to be limited, so that there is this concept of scarcity, right? If there's an infinite number of tokens, like each individual like token is useless, right? So you can say, hey, my Manu token, like, there are 10,000 tokens, and like you can start, for instance, sell them, and I can have 1 token of yours or 2, or an arbitrary amount.
Okay, but I mean, if you can have also fractions of tokens,
you can, yeah.
Then how does the concept of having it limited work? Because I mean, you can also, between 0.5 and 1, there's also an infinite amount of, I mean, how does that then work?
But it's worthless, right? So you can have like 1 euro, I mean, but of course you can also only have 1 cent. And then of course at one point, if you have like, of course a euro stops at one point, right? You have like 1 cent, and that's kind of the smallest unit of account that we can use. But for token, it can have like 8 decimal places, right? And of course then it's a bit, maybe then it becomes a bit weird, because you have like 0.000001, you know, of your token. But you can also limit that. So when you create, like, the token is kind of like creating your own currency, you can decide like how divisible is it, right? And you can even say that it's not divisible at all. You can say like 1 token, that's it, we cannot go any smaller.
Okay, now we've talked about tokens in like the currency sense, which I think is, at least in my sense, kind of clear. Of course, the nuances and the details of how blockchain works and how the transactions are verified, I don't want to get into that, because I think there are a lot of resources that cover that very well. But okay, we can imagine about like this currency that works on the decentralized, on the blockchain, no central bank organizing it. But then how does tokens work with like other stuff that is not money? For example, I mean, images. I mean, we've seen the NFTs, like all the hype the last year. Those are also tokens.
Yeah, I mean, NFT stands for non-fungible token, and so this is one sort of category of token, and then what we were talking about previously in the currency sense, those are fungible tokens. So what's the difference between something being fungible and something being non-fungible? It's really, if it's fungible, it doesn't really matter like what the, or at least the token itself is really, you cannot differentiate it to another token. So for instance, if you have €1 and I have €1 and we change our euros, right? We still have the same value, right? I mean, of course, now I have your euro and you have mine, but no one of us got richer or poorer in this trade. This is a fungible token, it's like a currency. But a non-fungible token is where the tokens themselves are inherently different. So what you were mentioning with NFTs is that I can, for instance, link pictures to it, right? So if I have a token, and the token sort of links to a picture of a cat, and you have a token and the token links to a picture of a dog, and we exchange these tokens, then something has changed. We don't have the same thing anymore. And this is really what this like NFT means. And now of course you could say in a sense maybe that even holds for traditional currencies, because usually when you have like, I don't know, a €10 bill, there is sort of a number printed on there, right? So when it was produced or something like that, a serial number. So you could say if we change two €10 bills, then maybe they're not the same, but they have the same amount of value, so we don't really care. Whereas when we sort of exchange NFTs, or in that sense also like artwork, right? The artwork might be of different values, so that's really where the difference is.
Okay, and can you tokenize? I mean, in this case, you're to this token, which is like the thing that I mean, at least as I understand it, the thing that that kind of you can store on this blockchain. I mean, you can have a token is a coin, a token is an image. You can link pretty much anything to it.
Yeah, you could technically, yeah.
Okay, and my question is, I mean, maybe we can start moving a bit more to the why questions and less to the like what questions. Like, why do you need to tokenize? What is the value of tokenizing stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a good question, kind of links to our web3 discussion. So let's go back to this analogy of like artwork, right? Of course, if I have a Picasso painting and I have it in the real world, right? It's an object in the real world and I want to sell it. It might be a bit difficult to sell it, right? Because I cannot just like, tell people, hey, I have it and I want to sell it. You kind of maybe need to go to a marketplace or something. And then just this entire process might be very convoluted. Whereas where you have an NFT, it's directly digital, right? It sort of puts the object of value from the offline world, from the analog world to the digital world. So it makes it quite easy then to trade and exchange. And since you have it digitalized, there are many more things that you can do with it, right? Because once it's digital, for instance, one thing that often gets mentioned is this idea of royalties, that every time your artwork gets resold, the original creator, so the painter, sort of would get a cut of this resale value. Because often we've seen it that, these pictures or these images that are now famous, initially they got sold for a very low value, and then only afterwards they got really popular, but the original artist doesn't really benefit from it. Of course, if we have it digitalized and everything is sort of governed by programs, we can make sure that every time it's traded, the original artist gets a cut of that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the value of doing of tokenizing something is just to have it digital and verifiable in this blockchain.
Yeah,
okay.
Easily accessible. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. Now moving to a next why question is. And maybe with a bit more personal touch, and we can start then discussing. Why are you then so interested in this topic? I mean, why do you see the whole potential of being able to tokenize everything or having it decentralized? I mean, I think it's a very interesting discussion. I mean, doesn't the web work the way that it does right now actually quite well?
Yeah. Good. Yeah. So for me personally, I think it has multiple reasons. And especially the first reason is very personal, because when I was like a teenager, I was always thinking how cool must it have been to sort of be a developer at the dawn of the internet, because everything is yet to be invented, right? And there's a lot of low-hanging fruit. In the sense it's very easy to like make yourself a name, because everything still has to be done. Nothing is there. So I was always thinking, what would be cool if such a opportunity presents itself again. And this is kind of what I saw in cryptocurrencies, and this entire like technology of having sort of a decentralized way to exchange value. I just felt like I got the impression that this might be as big as the internet. And that's why I started engaging with it, because I wanted to like learn more about it and then also understand, is it indeed this important, or I don't know, is it maybe just a scam or something like that?
Yeah. But why do you have this impression of that it's going to be so big?
Multiple things. So I think first of all, let's just start with the currency aspect. I think like sort of living in Germany, we're kind of in a privileged situation that we can sort of rely on our currency and we can trust our currency. I can put like 10,000 euros in the bank account now, maybe for my kids in like 10 years or whatever, and I know like in 10 years it probably has retained most of its value, right? And maybe even I got an interest on it, even though right now I don't really do get that, right? However, there are other countries where that's not the case, right? And I mean, just to take like a current example, for instance, the Russian ruble, for obvious reason, has fallen a lot, right? And you can say, well, that's good because they started a war, they should be punished. But there are people living in these countries and they just lost most of their savings for something that might not be their fault. So there should be sort of this this neutral exchange medium, or like there should be a neutral way to like store my wealth, right? Because I work for something all my life and I want to make sure that I can store this value without having to rely on anyone, because in cryptocurrencies we rely on math, right? And we can verify that everything is correct. So that's really one point. And then of course, just having these currencies opens a lot of possibilities, which I find very interesting coming from like having a technical background, because this idea of cutting out the middleman and sort of having stuff being governed by programs instead of humans, might say maybe it's a bit scary. I can understand that, but it also has a lot of opportunities, right? Because for one thing, it's just a cost factor, right? If the middleman always takes a cut because the human needs to live and needs to be paid, whereas when you have a program, maybe the program is still taking a cut, maybe not, but usually it's a much smaller cut, and then also like it's less error prone and it works 24/7. For instance, when I want to trade on the stock market, I cannot trade on the weekend because the stock markets are closed, unless I'm maybe a really big investor and I can trade on the aftermarket. Whereas for cryptocurrencies, I can always trade. And I don't even need to go to like a company or to a broker. There are programs, so-called smart contracts or decentralized applications, that allow me to do this trade directly on the blockchain without any human having to interfere. So there's no one who can tell me, look, you're not allowed to trade because you're from Russia. Because it's on the blockchain, the program always runs. And I find this a very fascinating idea, and that's something I would just simply like to build on.
Okay. I mean, of course, it has certain advantages that you pointed out, but maybe, to challenge the idea a little bit, or to just also get your opinion on that. For example, on the 2008 crisis, of course, the central bank in the USA also did put a lot of money into the economy to avoid it being, a worse crisis.
Yeah.
Or at least you could argue that. Maybe other. My point is, the government can also have the option to also support its citizens should a crisis like that happen, and that's then not necessarily possible with cryptocurrencies. Of course, having it neutral has the advantage of it being neutral, but also the disadvantage of it not being to support in case.
I agree, and I do see that it makes sense to have a democratically elected government, being able to do certain actions. But I don't think that, for instance, like having cryptocurrencies, I don't think it rules out the situation where we still have government-controlled currencies. I think it can go hand in hand. It seems to be the case that like most governments are sort of working on a on a crypto version of their own fiat currency, like the digital euro, digital yen, digital dollar. And I think that's going to happen. But then, and they can control this, right? It's kind of their currency, and as a government, they back it. But then we still have sort of like this decentralized safe haven where we know no one can control it. So I think these two things actually they go hand in hand, then exclude each other.
Yeah, okay, that's an interesting point. Cool. So, where were your interests? Why you are so interested in the blockchain and this movement? So you said, I mean, first on the currency part, that of course, I mean, the advantage that you said that we can trust. I mean, that we have a currency that doesn't depend on anything, and that I can trust like my savings on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any other aspects besides the currency part that you find?
I mean, yeah, I think it really sort of puts like gives the power back to the people. In the sense that, like as I said, like you don't have to rely on centralized platforms, and it's also very easy to like monetize yourself. So like what we have seen sort of with this entire like influencer movement, I think this is actually an interesting case study, because we had these influencers, they put like work into becoming popular and likable, and they had like this huge following, right? But there was no direct way to sort of monetize this community, right? So what they did is like they started promoting other people's product, right? So instead of, let's say, selling their own stuff, they were kind of just like a vessel for companies to promote their stuff. And really, you might say this is maybe not that nice, because they kind of, maybe they genuinely built this follower base and people follow them because they like him and they trust him, and then they use this trust to sell them products, right? So maybe that's not nice. No, one way is like if we sort of have this, if we go back to sort of this read, write, own thing, that you as a creator, you could create, let's say, your own NFTs. And in that sense, you can monetize yourself, because there could be something that like you offer to your community by saying, look, you can invest in me directly, right? Because often I cannot, like, I would like to invest in persons, right? You might see a really smart person, you might have a feeling this person could be successful, but there's no way in investing that person. But like, for instance, this is possible with like, you know, cryptocurrencies, or let's say NFTs. You could say, hey, I launched my, you know, my own NFT collection. You can invest into me. This way you generate revenue, but you use that to give back to your community, right? So let's say every time, I don't know, you can say 10% of the revenue I make on my YouTube videos, I give back to, you know, the people who hold my token, who hold my NFT. And it, you know, maybe this, you could have done this in the past with some very complicated legal structures, right? But this just makes it super easy, because everyone can just do it. Like, creating a token is literally like 2 clicks. So this is another aspect, for instance, that I really like, because it's, I don't know, it's funny because like initially also when we had the internet, there was no way to pay, right? So we needed custodians, like for instance PayPal. I mean, PayPal was a revolution because it actually allowed you to pay. And now, how cool is it to have this like native system, right? Like blockchain technology, cryptocurrencies that directly live in this world and we can interact with. And I think this has a lot of potential, and this makes me excited.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I agree with you that it has something new and something unexplored that is definitely interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But regarding that interesting aspect, I mean, we also see a lot of hype and a lot of I mean, everyone or many people are saying like, hey, this is the new thing. We have to work on this, and for example, let's say. I don't know, a certain person creates a cryptocurrency. I create the Manu coin.
Yeah.
And of course, I have an interest that you believe in the Manu coin too. Mm-hmm. And I will start telling you that, web3 is the new thing. You have to invest in the Manu coin in order to, I don't know, be successful or whatever. And I mean, how do you navigate this whole bias right now? Or how do you...
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, how do you work with that? I mean... because it's I think hard.
I think you're right. The signal to noise ratio is kind of low in this space. And this is because people are trying to get rich, right? I guess everyone wants to get rich quick, and everyone hopes, you know, crypto is funny the way they can do it. So how do we navigate this environment, and where there's so much noise? and you don't really know like what is true and what is just hype, because it's very easy to get burned. And yeah, this is also a challenge like I'm confronted with kind of every day. I mean, now I invest a lot of time into it, and you get better over time, and you sort of get to know who are the people who are actually telling important stuff, and what are the people who are just trying to get attention. But how do you do this if you don't want to invest this much time? And indeed, I find this very difficult, and I don't think I have a good answer to it. I mean, in terms of like investing, right? I mean, I guess it's always like maybe it's a bit safer to invest into coins with a larger market cap than trying to like hunt the next Dogecoin or the next Shiba Inu. But indeed, like if you see someone like Elon Musk, and I mean this was very controversial, right? So we don't really need to highlight this anymore. But if you see someone like Elon Musk like promoting like Dogecoin and this kind of stuff, you kind of ask yourself like what's the point? Because the guy like has enough money, so I'm not sure. I don't think he's really doing it for his own wealth, because he has enough, I guess, at this point. Maybe he's even just doing it because he thinks it's fun. But of course, for like his followership, that's not very good, because they might actually start to believe that this is a solid investment when in fact it's not. So I think this is actually one of the biggest problems we as a community have to work on, right? To make it easier to distinguish like what is fake, what is real. But yeah, I think this is to an extent also like the nature of social media, because there's always so much crap on social media, right? And I mean, there are also people who get their news from social media, and then I also always ask myself, I mean, yeah, how do they do it? Because there is so much crap.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess it makes sense. I mean, the more time you spend on it, the more you can, I mean, differentiate between crap and not crap.
Yeah.
But okay, maybe talking about, I mean, you mentioned that, I mean, you spend a lot of time on it. And I would also wonder, how did you like start getting into this? Because I mean, I read an article on Web3 and it has like 55 terms that I don't have any idea about. And yeah, how did you like sit down and say, okay, today is the day I start getting into this?
I think so. My journey kind of started at the end of 2017, and that was really sort of during the big bull market where Bitcoin sort of hit $20,000 per one Bitcoin for the first time. And actually, like I saw like an ad on Reddit. So I don't remember anymore if before that I had heard about cryptocurrencies before, possibly not. But I saw this ad also about this super tiny project, and this kind of sparked my interest. And yeah, based on that, I just felt fascinated by this idea that you. So I think what fascinated me the most initially was sort of the trustless and decentralized nature, that somehow we can exchange value, without needing to trust each other. I found that was really cool, right? I can just send you money, like I can just send a random person money and it works, and they cannot be like a hacker or something. So really, what got me excited was the technical aspects initially, and then then I was reading a lot on Reddit. Of course, there were like there's r/Bitcoin, r/Ethereum, right? That's really where I got most of my information, because it's still a very new space, and actually most of the information was in forums. It's not like there was like this, there was a Wikipedia or something. Like you really had to like go to forums and engage with people and just ask them. So that was really my step, and I mostly just sort of followed my gut instinct, and I was just curious, being like, hey, how does this work? And then I read on it, of course it also happened that I read something and I believed it, and then later turned out to be wrong. But I guess this always happens. Mm-hmm. And I think nowadays it's already much easier, because you have like big companies who you can, I guess, trust, right? You can go to Coinbase, and I think they have their own wiki. You can start reading there, for instance. And also like from the Ethereum Foundation, there are many articles that you can read. So, and there's then also usually a glossary, because you're right, there are a lot of acronyms being used. And then having such a glossary is of course very helpful.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I will certainly check out those links and put them in the description. Interesting. And I mean, you can also start reading the white papers and And I think that also
Yes.
gives a good.
I also did that, but that's then already a bit more technical. So if you come from a computer science background, I think this is still a good start. Whereas when you come more from a business background, I guess it's more difficult, and you're probably missing some background knowledge then. So then it's maybe good to start with these wikis first that I mentioned.
Okay, cool. And then, I mean, I would be also interested in like your journey, because you mentioned 2017 you started with Reddit, and then, I mean, I'm spoiling a little bit, but I mean, right now you're working on your decentralized organizations, etc. And I would be interesting how the whole journey kind of went. I mean, of course, not with that much detail, but like in a general sense.
I mean, as I said, started 2017. Back then I was studying artificial intelligence and also in deep learning, and I was very amazed by that as well. So I was kind of splitting my time, but I was actually more working at that point in time on like deep learning. So I was every now and then when I had like free time, I was reading about like cryptocurrencies online in the evening for an hour or something. I really was more like learning about it, but I didn't build anything myself. And then I really started sort of building myself at the start of 2021. For instance, one project I work on was MunichNFT.com, where we kind of had this 1 weekend hackathon where we built an NFT platform, but at the same time we also had artists, and the goal was to sort of onboard these artists, because they were already digital artists, and we said, hey, do this hackathon with us. We kind of build a platform where you can create your NFT, and then also the other people can see it and then maybe buy it. And we, while you create your artwork, we actually build this platform. This was one of the first things I worked on. We called it like City NFTs back then. And then I also simply joined some hackathons with friends, got my hands dirty, and just I mean, I come from a technical background, so for me it's not that unusual to just like try things out, do some tutorials, and see what happens.
Yeah, but that's true. I mean, I think with these sort of things, the best way to learn is to also just do stuff.
I think it's the best way, but it's of course also a bit more complicated. I mean, if you come from a technical background, I think it's doable, but if you don't, then I would assume it's a bit more difficult. But I think it's the best way to learn. But and now it's already much easier than it was like 2-3 years ago, because I felt like when I looked into it in 2017, I felt very much confused and everything was much more difficult. And now we already have some infrastructure and we have good tutorials that makes your life much easier.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then I mean, you're excited about the topic, you're excited about blockchain, you're working on your projects. How do you think this is, like, in which direction do you think this is going, in like close future and maybe a bit further away? Like, what should we expect from this?
What should we expect? Yeah. So there certainly was a time where not only I, but I would say most people were very scared, the government might, regulate crypto too much, cryptocurrencies, or that government simply ban it. And that, would have most likely shut everything down, because back then, crypto was still so small that it was, I guess, possible to actually, let's say, to kill it. Nowadays, like, I see this less and less. Because, I mean, for instance, Coinbase is a publicly traded company in the United States that is an exchange and a broker for cryptocurrencies. And like, I don't see like a world where the US would say we completely ban cryptocurrencies, because they also know if only they do it and other countries don't, then all the talent would move away into countries where it's still allowed. I think it's for sure here to stay. Right now, of course, it's a very crucial time, because a lot of regulation is being made. And that might significantly influence the way we can interact with cryptocurrencies. What I was actually just learning about today is that the EU, there is a new like amendment for some regulation that's being voted on in the next couple of days, and that would require you to like every time I send like you money via cryptocurrency, so from my wallet to your wallet, it would require me that I know like your full name, your address, and that I also have to make this information available. So this is kind of to tackle money laundering and these things, but of course it would be very terrible and very impractical. Because you cannot expect people like if I just simply want to send you some money, right? Because I don't know, you bought pizza last time, that I have to require all this that I have to do all this required legislation or like regulation part.
Which I mean is not even necessary on PayPal.
Yeah.
On PayPal I just need your email.
Exactly. Yeah. So the idea there is that sort of everything it sort of goes via PayPal. They're the custodian, so it's PayPal's responsibility to make sure that there's no money laundering going on. Whereas the nice thing about crypto is like I can send you money and there is no one who can forbid me to send this money to you. And that's why they would then require you to sort of as an individual take care of all these legal requirements. But it's obviously like super infeasible for like everyday people. So right now a lot of people are discussing it on Twitter and telling everyone on the EU Parliament to vote against this piece of regulation.
but I mean that also raises an interesting point, which is of course cryptocurrencies are used in illegal markets, and I mean what is your take on that, or how do you think you could or the cryptocurrency community, or I think that's not the best way to mention the crypto community is should tackle that?
Yeah, so I actually don't even see like super big problems with it. Because people say, people use crypto to buy drugs on the internet, and yes, but people also use euros and US dollars to like buy drugs in real life, going to a dealer, right? So in either way, like we have this, let's say like illegal actions being financed using a currency.
But wouldn't crypto like facilitate those illegal actions?
So I'm not sure because, as I said, a blockchain records every transaction. And it's immutable. So once it's there, it cannot be changed anymore. So every like illegal transaction that takes place is recorded forever. So I think it actually makes it easier to sort of track down illegal activities, because you see what happens. And I mean, for instance, also back in the day, people thought Bitcoin was very private, and people used Bitcoin to there was a marketplace called Silk Road. They used it to, buy, for instance, guns there, like really, really illegal stuff. Yeah. But nowadays, people are sitting in prison because of that, because it was on the blockchain, and like we figured out the tech to sort of be able to trace everything, and we could prosecute these people. And so regarding the facilitation point, I'm not sure. Like I actually don't. I actually think crypto makes it easier in that sense. And what we see now is, since I mentioned many things are governed by smart contracts, which are programs, every now and then it happens that a smart contract, a program gets hacked, and then people kind of like steal money on the blockchain by exploiting a bug. And actually for these hackers, it's very, very difficult to actually use their crypto money, because as soon as people notice, hey, there was a hack, we can see what address has these funds. And then all the exchanges see this address and they block it. They say, if you wanna, send money from this address to my exchange, I won't accept it. You won't be able to convert your crypto into fiat. Mm-hmm. So we already see that, like, if you have kind of like money on a blockchain and people know it's dirty, it's very difficult to do anything with it, because there are like 1,000 eyes watching your wallet every day. It's like you have a bank account, and you have money on there for selling cocaine, for selling drugs, but like everyone in the world can see this money, and everyone in the world can see where you send it and where you spend it. So
yeah, okay, that's really interesting, and I think that's a perspective that I didn't have or know. I mean, I only hear the bad voices saying, yeah, it's going to be very easy for dealers, etc. But I think that's a very relevant point.
Yeah, I mean, people are actually scared that if we only use cryptocurrencies like that, we lose privacy, because everything can be seen. So now, I mean, there are even protocols that are trying to make crypto more private, because it actually is not that private, mm-hmm. which many people I think don't realize yet.
That's interesting. But okay, I mean, Yeah, it's just a very interesting space, and I don't want to extend this too much. So I think my last question, or my last two questions would be, I mean, maybe you, or no, rather, my last question already. Is there a question that I missed? Do you have something that you would like to additionally talk about, or like a specific topic that?
I think I would, in general, advise people to like have an open mind about upcoming technologies, and I absolutely see that there are a lot of like points where you can criticize cryptocurrencies or like the entire technology, and you can say there are a lot of problems, and I think those are valid claims. But I mean, we are working on all of that, right? So it's really not done. And I mean, I guess there were also critical voices about the internet, and people will say, hey, you know, the internet is going to fade and it's actually not that important. Who needs to be connected all the time? But you know, over time we solve all these problems, we make it more usable. And I think this is also going to happen to crypto. And I think sort of the best applications, like the killer applications, I think they haven't even been built yet. So I think there will be like more applications where people really get it, right? Where people really think, okay, this is what we really needed. So yeah, just have an open mind. And yeah, in general, there is unfortunately, a lot of tribalism in crypto. This is partially due to because people try to protect their own investment.
Yeah, what do you mean with tribalism?
By tribalism, I mean that they say Bitcoin is the best cryptocurrency and it should be the only one. There should be no other. Every other cryptocurrency is a scam. Yeah, only Bitcoin is the true cryptocurrency. That's what I call tribalism. That people really sort of flock up with people who share the same ideas and just fight everyone else. And yeah, I started to say I think this is largely due because people simply want to protect their investment. If you have a lot of money in Bitcoin, of course you won't say, hey, maybe this other cryptocurrency is much better, because people might sell their Bitcoin and then the value drops. So yeah, if you see this tribalism, maybe don't be too intimidated by it, because it is there. It's not very good. So people really fight, like especially like on Twitter, and they make claims that are not even true. For instance, Ethereum is gonna. So this is a whole different debate, but Ethereum is gonna switch to a different consensus mechanism. So a consensus mechanism is the technology we use to secure a blockchain. And Bitcoin was criticized a lot for using proof of work, which is a consensus mechanism because it uses so much electricity. And now Ethereum is also using that right now, but they're going to switch to a different consensus mechanism called proof of stake, and it uses dramatically less energy. And of course Bitcoin maybe feels a bit intimidated by that, because people might think, hey, I don't want to use a currency that is bad for the environment, right? I mean, that's a thought to get behind. And then they start saying, yeah, this new technology, proof of stake, this new consensus mechanism is not as secure, has many flaws, it's bad. All this kind of stuff, which, I don't think is fully fair. And of course, you still have people who are able to have a reasonable argument, reasonable discussion with, but, you also have these people who simply say everything else is bad. So that's also maybe like a word of caution if people start engaging in this space, that, really not everything you read is true, and there are people who have a lot of followers who are saying things that are not fully correct.
Yeah, but that's the challenge that we also mentioned some time ago about navigating the space and navigating especially all those conflicts of interest that come up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, very interesting. Maybe I have a last question that just popped out into my head. I mean, are there any projects, crypto projects or stuff that you're right now interested about or hyped about that you would like to maybe highlight, so that whatever is watching this can also check that out?
Yeah, I mentioned Lens protocol already.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really new. So there aren't many applications built on top of it yet. But I think it has it could have a lot of use cases if people use it fully. So I'm excited about that. Then in general, I'm excited about Ethereum switching to proof of stake, and also just the mindset that they try to sort of make the blockchain technology better and better. I'm excited about like this is technical. I will just briefly mention it, like layer 2 solutions, so solutions that help a blockchain scale. There are a lot of like insanely smart people working on that, using difficult technology to actually make it work. And yeah, I think those are, to keep it short, there are many more things I'm excited about, but these things as well.
Okay. Yeah, cool. I mean, amazing. Really, thank you for taking the time and
Yeah, my pleasure. It was nice.
and speaking about cryptocurrency. I think for sure questions will come up, and
Yes.
I will put your Twitter in the YouTube description. And,
Yes, please.
and I mean also comments and stuff, and maybe we do a second round at some point.
Yeah, why not? Awesome.
Yeah, amazing.
Okay, if you made it so far, congrats and thank you. I will put every resource that we spoke about, including Nick's Twitter and the link to the Pretzel DAO on the description. So be sure to check that out. And yeah, wish you a very good day.